Today is January 20th, and today's quote is entitled, "Develop an Appreciation Mentality." Everyone has many faults, but if we focus on developing an appreciation mentality, we will tend to overlook those faults. There is so much to appreciate in others. So if we see the fault, it says more about us needing to find faults than it does about them having faults. Meditate on that I see a fault. Maybe it's really a fault. It's objectively speaking, it's a fault. There's no question. It is a fault. No one will deny it. But the problem is I am focused on the fault. The problem is less that the person has the fault, and the problem is more that I have a need to focus on the fault, which indicates the wrong mentality. It indicates a mentality which somehow or other notices someone else's faults. And as you know, when you notice someone else's faults, it's very easy to get absorbed in their faults. So absorbed that you start thinking of their faults more than you think of anything else, or you think of it a lot, at least enough so that it disturbs you, it distresses you, it discourages you. It could even make you angry, upset, etc. And I've seen this, and you've seen this. Now, if we are smart, and I know you're smart, so we need to act smart because we are smart, it doesn't make sense to focus on anything which is going to be upsetting for us. It doesn't make sense to focus on anything that's going to discourage us. It doesn't make sense to focus on something that Krishna tells us and Prabhupada tells us not to focus on. What does make sense is to focus on the good in others, because if we focus on the good in others, it actually helps us. Appreciation, I say, or my experience is, and therefore I say, appreciation is like a sadhana. It's something that we should be doing regularly, daily. It's actually, I feel, necessary for nourishing our Krishna consciousness. Just as finding fault is destructive, appreciation is nourishing. But as stated in this quote, it requires a mentality. It's not that I can just tell you appreciate and you write it on your to-do list. But it requires a certain mentality in which we are not looking for faults, but we naturally see the sincerity of a devotee, or we naturally see the genuineness or the good qualities of a devotee. But if we have a fault-finding mentality, it's the opposite. So we naturally see what's wrong with them, and it becomes difficult to see what's good in them. And we should understand that is not the mentality of a devotee. Devotee does not have that consciousness. How can we overcome the tendency to find fault? It's very simple. Develop the mentality of a devotee. You won't have the tendency because devotees don't have the tendency. And therefore, we should think, if I have that tendency, what kind of devotee am I? Because by nature, a devotee doesn't find fault. Prabhupada has stated that if we're in the fault-finding mentality, then we're living in the material world. Now, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has spoken much about the fault-finding mentality, and his basic point is that it's detrimental to our bhakti, so therefore, even if the fault is real, still it's harmful to our Krishna consciousness. And if we focus on it, we are the loser. Whereas if we focus on the good qualities of another person, we are the winner. And don't say, but so-and-so Prabhu doesn't have any good qualities. Rather say, there's something wrong with me that I don't see those good qualities. Or as this quote said, there's something wrong with me that I have a need to see the faults. So when we see the faults in others, rather than focus on what's wrong with them, we should try to remember this quote and think, oh, I have a need to find fault. There's something wrong with me. Now, the last thing I would like to say, and you probably know this, is that generally when we find faults in others, it's something about ourselves that we see in them, something about ourselves we don't like, or something about ourselves we haven't resolved. And it upsets us when we see it in others. So often we are just seeing ourselves in others and complaining about ourselves, although we think we're complaining about them. So also be aware of that. But I think the most important thing for us to remember is fault finding reflects a mentality, not of a Krishna conscious person, but of an ordinary person. And we so much do not need to be like ordinary people. It's very important that we become transcendental, at least situated in sattva gun. So we should not be acting like ordinary people. That will not help us, and it will not help our movement.